Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen, dedicated basketball aficionados, and fans tuning in from every single corner of the globe. You already know why we are here today. We are about to unpack a narrative that goes far beyond the simple bouncing of a basketball on a hardwood floor. We are talking about pride, we are talking about redemption, we are talking about the raw, unfiltered emotion that makes international basketball one of the most compelling spectacles on the face of the earth. Today, we are diving deep into a headline that has absolutely set the internet, and specifically the passionate Philippine basketball community, completely ablaze. The title of today's exhaustive breakdown is Kai Sotto vs. Keanu Pinder, the arrogant Australian player meet again, and Kai was still angry. Now, before we even begin to dissect the X's and O's, the defensive rotations, or the box score statistics, we have to set the stage and understand the absolute magnitude of this encounter. In the world of professional sports, there are matchups, and then there are rivalries. Matchups are dictated by the schedule, but rivalries are forged in the fires of physical confrontation, competitive disrespect, and a burning desire to establish dominance. When Kai Sotto made his highly anticipated leap to the Australian National Basketball League, joining the Adelaide 36ers, he wasn't just bringing his 7'3" frame to a new continent. He was carrying the hopes, the dreams, and the unparalleled passion of over 100 million Filipinos. He stepped into a league that is globally renowned for its unrelenting physicality, a league where seasoned veterans do not care about your high school mixtapes, your social media following, or your international hype. The NBL is a grown man's league, a brutal testing ground characterized by hard screens, elbows in the paint, and a style of play that borders on rugby with a basketball. And waiting in that league was Keanu Pinder. Pinder is not just any player. He is a phenomenal athlete, a back-to-back NBL Most Improved player, a man who built his reputation in Cairns as an absolute force of nature on the boards and an enforcer in the paint. Pinder plays with a specific brand of Australian swagger, a supreme confidence that borders on what many opposing fans, particularly in this context, have labeled as arrogance. He is the kind of player who thrives on intimidation, who uses his elite athleticism and physical strength to bully opponents, get inside their heads, and disrupt their rhythm. He is vocal, he is aggressive, and he absolutely does not back down from a challenge, regardless of who is standing in front of him. The genesis of this explosive narrative traces back to Kai Sotto's very first moments in the NBL. It was his baptism by fire. The moment the young Filipino prodigy stepped onto the court, the scouting report was undoubtedly clear: test the rookie. Be physical with him. See if he breaks. And Keanu Pinder was the man who delivered that message. We all remember that initial encounter, the brief but incredibly telling shoving match that occurred right as Kai was finding his footing. It was a classic veteran move, an attempt to welcome the highly touted prospect to the professional ranks by imposing physical dominance. Pinder pushed, and to the absolute delight of his supporters, Kai Sotto did not fold. He did not back away. He stood his ground, leading to a tense standoff that required Adelaide captain Mitch McCarron to step in and defend his young teammate. That single moment, that brief flash of aggression, planted a seed. It wasn't just a basketball play, it was a collision of egos, a clash of cultures, and the birth of a deeply personal on-court vendetta. For Kai Sotto, a young man known for his calm demeanor, his polite nature, and his stoic approach to the game, being pushed around was a wake-up call. It was the moment he realized that talent and height alone would not survive the grueling environment of the NBL. He needed grit. He needed anger. He needed to channel that disrespect into fuel. And that brings us to the crux of today's massive deep dive. The rematch. The moment these two titans of the hardwood crossed paths once again. The narrative heading into this game was electric. Would Keanu Pinder continue his aggressive, borderline arrogant intimidation tactics? Would Kai Sotto shrink under the bright lights and the physical pressure, or would he remember that initial shove? The title tells you everything you need to know. Kai was still angry. He carried the memory of that disrespect with him, internalizing it, letting it simmer beneath the surface until the very second the referee tossed the ball into the air for the tip-off. This was not just another game on the NBL calendar. For Kai, this was about sending a definitive message to Keanu Pinder, to the Cairns Taipans, to the entire Australian League, and to the countless scouts watching around the world. It was a statement that he was no longer the skinny rookie who could be pushed around in the post. It was a declaration that he had evolved, that he had spent hours in the weight room, that he had fortified his mind, and that he was ready to hand that physical aggression right back to the sender. The anger we are talking about is not a reckless, out-of-control fury that leads to foolish fouls and ejections. No, the anger Kai Sotto displayed in this encounter was a cold, calculated, deeply focused rage. It was the kind of anger that sharpens your instincts, tightens your defensive rotations, and makes you challenge every single shot at the rim with absolute bad intentions. We are going to look at how Keanu Pinder, with his high-flying, rim-rattling style and his undeniable talent, tried to assert his dominance early on. We will analyze the specific body language, the unspoken words exchanged in the paint, the heavy collisions under the basket when the referees swallowed their whistles. We will break down how the so-called arrogant demeanor of the Australian star was met with an impenetrable wall of Filipino pride. This is a story about a young player learning to bite back. It is about the psychology of athletic competition, where mental warfare is just as crucial as physical execution. If you show weakness in professional basketball, the wolves will eat you alive. Kai Sotto looked the wolf dead in the eyes and bared his own teeth. So, lock in, grab a comfortable seat, and make sure you pay close attention to every single detail we are about to unravel. We are going to explore the defensive masterclasses, the crucial rebounds, the blocked shots that echoed through the arena, and the absolute sheer will that Kai Sotto displayed to ensure that Keanu Pinder remembered his name for all the right reasons. This is the ultimate breakdown of one of the most intense, narrative-rich, and emotionally charged individual rivalries we have seen in recent overseas basketball history. Kai Sotto versus Keanu Pinder. The rematch. The reckoning. Let us get into the deep dive. To fully comprehend the sheer magnitude of this rivalry and the explosive nature of their subsequent meetings, we must first deeply analyze the contrasting profiles of the two individuals involved. This is not just a battle of physical dimensions. It is a profound clash of basketball philosophies, developmental backgrounds, and psychological makeups. Let us begin with Keanu Pinder. When you look at Pinder's trajectory in the NBL, you are looking at a story of sheer resilience and relentless physical development. Coming into the league, he was a raw athlete, playing limited minutes and averaging modest numbers with the Adelaide 36 Airs before making his move to the Cairns Taipans. It was in Cairns, under the strategic guidance of coach Adam Ford, that Pinder transformed from a role player into an absolute monster. He became the first player in NBL history to win the Most Improved Player award twice, back-to-back. You do not achieve that kind of unprecedented historical feat without possessing a ferocious work ethic and a profound belief in your own superiority. Pinder's game is built on high energy, explosive leaping ability, and a rugged, physical presence in the paint. He averages near double-doubles, pulling down offensive rebounds through sheer force of will and finishing through heavy contact. His demeanor on the court is undeniably intense. He talks trash, he flexes after big dunks, he mean-mugs his opponents, and he plays with a chip on his shoulder that is visible from the upper decks of the arena. For opposing fans, this supreme self-assurance is easily interpreted as arrogance. It is a brash, loud, and unapologetically Australian style of sporting confidence. Pinder uses this persona as a weapon. By asserting himself physically and vocally, he attempts to break the concentration of his matchups. He wants you to worry about his elbows, he wants you to be intimidated by his bounce, and he wants you to second-guess your moves in the post because you know he is coming to contest the shot with violent intentions. On the completely opposite side of the spectrum, we have Kai Sotto. The pressure on Kai Sotto's shoulders is something that very few athletes in the history of the sport can genuinely relate to. He is not just playing for a contract. He is playing as the beacon of hope for a basketball-obsessed nation of millions. From his early days at the 8 Neo Blue Eaglets, to his highly publicized stint in the United States, to his commitment to the G League Ignite, and finally his pivot to the Australian NBL, Kai's every single move has been scrutinized under a microscopic lens. Entering the NBL at just 19 years old, measuring 7'3" but carrying a relatively slender frame compared to the grown, muscle-bound men of the Australian League, Kai was an obvious target. His natural demeanor is polite, respectful, and stoic. He is not a natural trash talker. He is a cerebral player who relies on his incredible height, his surprisingly soft touch around the rim, his high basketball IQ, and his exceptional passing ability for a big man. But the NBL does not reward politeness. The NBL rewards survivors. When Kai first arrived, the scouting report was universal. Get into his chest, push him off his spots, and make him uncomfortable. This brings us directly to the inciting incident, the spark that lit this powder keg. In Kai's debut period, he was immediately met with the harsh reality of NBL basketball, and the messenger was Keanu Pinder. During that fateful game, as Kai stepped onto the court, Pinder engaged him immediately. It was not a basketball play, it was a territorial dispute. A physical shove, a chest-to-chest confrontation, a moment designed to welcome the rookie to the jungle and see if he had the stomach for the fight. Kai, to his immense credit, shoved back. He did not cower. That moment was a paradigm shift. It was the moment Kai Sotto realized that he could not rely solely on his finesse. He had to develop an edge. He had to cultivate a sense of righteous anger. Fast forward to the highly anticipated rematch. The atmosphere was palpable. The fans knew the history. The commentators knew the history. And most importantly, the players knew the history. As the teams took the floor, the camera lenses were fixed on the warm-ups, looking for any sign of acknowledgement between the two giants. There was none. It was strictly business. But behind Kai Sotto's focused expression was a burning memory. The title, "Kai was still angry," is the defining thesis of this performance. When the game commenced, the intensity in the paint was suffocating. Keanu Pinder, true to his nature, tried to establish his dominance early. He looked to crash the offensive glass with reckless abandon, attempting to use his superior leaping ability and muscular frame to outposition the taller but leaner Sotto. But this was not the same Kai Sotto from the debut. This was a Kai Sotto who had spent months enduring the physical punishment of the NBL, a Kai Sotto who had spent countless hours with the strength and conditioning staff, and a Kai Sotto who was deeply, personally motivated to shut down the man who had tried to embarrass him. The anger translated into immaculate defensive positioning. Instead of allowing Pinder to get a running start at the rim, Kai stepped up early, meeting Pinder outside the restricted area. When Pinder tried to use his shoulder to create space, Kai absorbed the contact, holding his ground with a widened base and a lowered center of gravity. This is where the basketball IQ of Kai Sotto truly neutralized the raw athleticism of the Australian. By not giving up deep post position, Kai forced Pinder to take tough, contested, unbalanced shots over his massive 7'3" wingspan. There was a specific sequence in the game that perfectly encapsulated this dynamic. Pinder received the ball on the block, faced up, and attempted one of his aggressive straight-line drives to the basket. He lowered his shoulder, expecting the younger player to yield. Instead, Kai Sotto moved his feet flawlessly, took the hit square in the chest without fouling, and as Pinder went up for the shot, Kai rose up and absolutely swallowed the basketball, cleanly blocking the attempt and securing the rebound in one fluid motion. The crowd erupted. But Kai did not celebrate. He did not flex. He simply looked down at the court, passed the ball to his point guard, and ran back on offense. That icy demeanor, fueled by an underlying anger, was more intimidating than any trash talk could ever be. It sent a chilling message: I am not afraid of you anymore. Your intimidation tactics are useless here. The psychological warfare continued on the other end of the floor. When Adelaide ran their offensive sets, Kai intentionally sought out contact. He set bone-jarring screens, making sure Pinder felt his presence on every pick and roll. When Kai received the ball in the post, he did not settle for fadeaways. He backed Pinder down, utilizing a newly developed strength and an aggressive drop step that we had not seen in his earlier games. He was taking the fight directly to the aggressor. This transformation is critical to understand. In sports, anger is often viewed as a detriment, an emotion that clouds judgment and leads to mistakes. But when harnessed correctly, when channeled into focus and physical exertion, anger becomes an ultimate equalizer. Kai Sotto's anger at the perceived arrogance of Keanu Pinder allowed him to transcend his physical limitations at the time. It gave him the adrenaline required to battle in the trenches for 40 minutes. Let us delve deeper into the concept of arrogance versus confidence, because it is central to this rivalry. Keanu Pinder supporters will fiercely argue that he is not arrogant, but merely supremely confident, a necessary trait for an undersized center playing in a physical league. They will point to his incredible journey, his awards, and his undeniable production on the court. But to the opposing side, particularly the legion of Kai Sotto fans, Pinder represented the traditional bully archetype. He represented the establishment trying to keep the highly touted international prospect down. Therefore, when Kai stood up to him, when Kai outplayed him in crucial defensive sequences, it felt like a victory not just for the Adelaide 36ers, but for every fan who had ever felt disrespected or underestimated. The strategic adjustments made by both teams throughout the game further highlighted this individual battle. Cairns attempted to pull Kai away from the basket, running Pinder off screens to utilize his quickness. However, Kai's defensive awareness was exceptional. He showed hard on the screens, recovered quickly, and used his length to disrupt the passing lanes. He was a one-man wrecking crew on the defensive end, altering shots even when he didn't block them, forcing Cairns to second-guess their entire interior offensive strategy. Furthermore, we must acknowledge the role of the Adelaide 36 Airs, coaching staff and teammates in this dynamic. Captain Mitch McCarron, who had defended Kai in that initial altercation, was constantly communicating with his young center, ensuring he stayed locked in and emotionally regulated. The team recognized that Kai was playing with a different level of intensity, an anger-fueled determination, and they fed off that energy. They funneled offensive players toward Kai, trusting him to protect the rim, and they rallied behind him every time he secured a heavily contested rebound against the relentless Pinder. As the game wore on, the physical toll became apparent. Both men were battered, bruised, and exhausted. But Kai's resolve never wavered. The anger that had ignited this performance sustained him through the fatigue. He was not going to let Keanu Pinder have the last word. Every time Pinder tried to spark a Cairns run with a high-energy play, Kai was there to extinguish it with a fundamental box-out, a timely contest, or a crucial defensive rebound. This game was a masterclass in emotional regulation and applied competitive fury. Kai Sotto proved that he could take a deeply personal grievance, an incident that could have shattered the confidence of a lesser player, and use it as the foundational building block for a dominant defensive performance. He proved that he could survive the physical gauntlet of the NBL, not by avoiding contact, but by welcoming it, absorbing it, and redirecting it with devastating effect. The narrative of the arrogant Australian, meeting the angry Filipino prodigy, lived up to every single ounce of the hype. It was a brutal, beautiful exhibition of high-stakes basketball. It showed us the evolution of Kai Sotto from a highly touted prospect into a hardened professional capable of holding his own against the very best and most intimidating players the league had to offer. It demonstrated that behind the polite smile and the quiet demeanor lies a fierce, unyielding competitor who will not be bullied, who will not be disrespected, and who will absolutely make you pay if you cross the line. As we finally catch our breath and step back from this incredibly intense, microscopic breakdown of this rivalry, we have to look at the broader implications of what this matchup truly means for the future of both of these remarkable athletes. For Keanu Pinder, this encounter was a testament to the respect he commands. You do not become the target of an opposing player's focused anger unless you are a significant threat. Pinder's aggressive style, his relentless motor, and his undeniable talent force opposing teams to fundamentally alter their game plans. He remains one of the most compelling and dominant forwards in the region, a player who wears his heart on his sleeve and leaves absolutely everything on the floor, regardless of whether you view his supreme confidence as arrogance or simply the necessary armor of a professional gladiator. But for Kai Sotto, this narrative arc represents something far more profound. This was a coming-of-age story written in real time on the hardwood. The evolution from the young player who was pushed around in his debut, to the focused, angry, and defensively dominant anchor who stood his ground in the rematch, is exactly the kind of developmental leap that NBA scouts and international basketball analysts are desperately looking for. They know he has the height. They know he has the shooting touch. What they needed to see was the fire. They needed to see the grit. They needed to see if he had the mental fortitude to go to war in the trenches with grown men who want nothing more than to physically break him. By channeling his anger, by remembering the disrespect, and by executing a flawless, physically imposing performance against one of the league's most intimidating enforcers, Kai Sotto answered those questions with a resounding, emphatic yes. He proved that he possesses the competitive savagery required to survive and thrive at the highest levels of professional basketball. This rivalry with Keanu Pinder will forever be remembered as the crucible in which Kai Sotto's professional toughness was forged. Thank you so much for joining me on this exhaustive deep dive into one of the most fascinating individual storylines in recent basketball history. If you appreciate this level of detailed, uncompromising analysis, if you love the psychological breakdowns just as much as the box scores, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this rivalry. Did you view Keanu Pinder's actions as arrogant or just hard-nosed basketball? And how impressed were you with Kai Sotto's ability to channel his anger into such a dominant performance? Let's keep the debate going in the comments section. Until next time, keep your eyes on the court, respect the game, and I will see you in the next breakdown.